Hello, it's good to be back after a week's break. I was wondering whether I'd managed to get enough pre-recorded to cover last week, but I didn't in the end. I'm sat outside this morning, the wind is blowing, just those early signs of autumn kicking in. Yeah, it's still warm in the day, but a little bit cold now, and the dew is beginning to settle. A beautiful time of year. But here we are anyway to get on with our Bible study in John's Gospel. I'm going to pick up on one phrase this morning and unpack it a little bit. When I was looking back over everything we've done so far, I was thinking, though after all these sessions, we're still in John 1, it feels like there's many bits that I've either missed out or not gone over, so I might have to cut back on myself at some point and pick up some of these other things. Today I want to pick up on let's just find it in John 1:17. It says, "For the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ." Having read that, I want to go back a little bit and read a little bit before that from John 14. It says, "The Word became flesh and he dwelt among us. We have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, full of grace and truth." So there, right away, we have this mark of who Jesus is. He's a man that came from heaven, full of grace and truth. It says, John testified concerning him. He cried out, saying, "This is the one I spoke about when I said, 'He who comes after me has surpassed me because he was before me.'" Yeah, interesting from some of the other studies we've been doing that John the Baptist, in a natural sense, John the Baptist was born first. In a natural sense, John the Baptist's ministry was first, but he's making a declaration that isn't about the natural, but he's, again, as John has tended to do, is pointing to a heavenly position, that Jesus was before John the Baptist, that Jesus was there from the very creation of the world. It says, "Out of his fullness we've all received grace in place of grace already be given." So that's an interesting statement on its own, and I might have to come back to that one because I haven't focused on that for today. But I want to pick on this bit about Moses. Moses came with the law, and Jesus came with grace and truth, and just quickly have a look at the shift that happens. We have a number of scriptures, don't we, that talk about the law. It says Jesus didn't come to destroy the law, but he came to fulfill the law. So we have to have that, in perspective, that Jesus is the fulfillment, not the destruction, not the loss of the law. So when you go back into the Old Testament and you have that time when Moses goes up onto Mount Sinai and he goes up to receive the law, it's a very, very interesting little story that goes on there. So Moses, he goes up, and when he receives the law, a number of things go on. One of them, which I think is very significant, is when the law is given, it says that basically God chisels out a stone and gives it to Moses and writes on the stone or on the rock the law. And Moses brings that down to earth. But the moment that Moses arrives, back among the people, he hears what's going on, and I'm not going to that bit of the story, but he throws the stone down and they break. So you have that symbolic image that the law on earth is broken immediately, and that goes right back to Adam and Eve in Genesis. But the other bit you've got there is that you've got this stone that's cut out of a rock. And Jesus, pictorially, was called the rock. And so what that picture is saying to me, that you have a rock with a piercing, to use a better word, and you have Jesus, who, when he comes to the cross, is pierced. Now Moses goes back up at the mountain, and he asks to see the glory of God. And when he asks to see the glory of God, God says to him, "You can't see my face, but what I'll do is I'm going to hide you in the cleft of a rock." You think, where was the cleft of the rock? Well, that stone, the law, was taken out of the cleft of the rock. Who's the rock? Jesus. So that, again, in a pictorial way, but a very powerful way, Moses is hidden in the rock, and it says the hand of God. Is basically he's covered in the rock while the Lord goes by, and then hands revealed, uncovered, and he sees the back of God. We sees him after he's gone by, and that's when he asks to see the glory of God. But the important thing here, it's a glorious picture, but the important thing here for us just to grasp hold of is the law is like a segment, it's like a cleft in the rock being Jesus. If we've got that picture, the law comes out of Christ. So Jesus comes not to destroy the law, but to fulfill the law. And one of the features of the Old Testament that comes around time and time is that there's this partial revelation that comes through the law, through the Old Testament, and the fullness is found in Christ. Again, another example of partial. In the Old Testament, the focus is very much on the tithe. What's the tithe? It's it's part of the whole provision that we receive from God. In the New Testament, the focus changes. It's not on the tithe, it's that everything we have comes from the Father. It's that wholeness. And I think this shift is what I want us to just get our heads around a little bit. So when Jesus comes to earth, what's Jesus doing? Jesus is coming to bring the full picture. The full picture isn't law, but it's grace and truth. So the fullness is grace and truth. There's a fullness that Jesus comes to bring. So it says Jesus doesn't come to destroy the law, but to fulfill it. Now you look at the journey of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus as well, and you realize that one of the big speeches, if you like, that Jesus does is the what's called the Beatitudes, and the teaching around there. Now, when you look at the Beatitudes, I think the Beatitudes is Jesus beginning a journey to help us see that there's something different. And so whereas in the Old Testament, for example, the law might say don't kill, through the Beatitudes, Jesus starts to say, yeah, but if you get angry in your heart, it's just the same. And you start to look at that and you think, someone that has lived in a way trying to obey the law, or ourselves, if we try and live trying to obey the law, we're going to hit a problem. And the problem is that it's not just about, okay, I can keep 10 commandments, I'll be fine. But there's another level that Jesus is drawing out. It's the level of the heart. And on one hand, when you start to look at that, you go, well, I can't fulfill anything. There's always going to be moments where something happens in my heart that means that I haven't fulfilled, if you like, the essence, the substance of that particular commandment. And Jesus, what he's doing is he's shifting it, because truth doesn't come on its own, heaven. Truth comes with grace. And we suddenly realize that, I may not be able to fulfill the law. I may not be able to, in my heart, get everything right. But what comes with truth is grace. And that is what Jesus came to fulfill. You see, going back into the Old Testament, when the 10 Commandments brought to earth, that slither left a piercing. On earth, there's a piercing. It was Jesus being nailed to the cross. It was his death on the cross. That releases not just truth, it releases grace and forgiveness for us. So we don't live in a place where we're trying to obey some set of rules. And I think we'd find if we live trying to obey rules, we'll end up stuck. We'll end up in trouble. because at some point we won't succeed, and probably very quickly. And what happens when you don't succeed, if you don't have grace, then that moment of breaking the law, or let's call it the Beatitudes, that bigger picture, without grace, the root is condemnation. The impact of condemnation is it stops us in our tracks, and we're no longer able to live the fullness of life that's been given to us. But we haven't got condemnation. In Romans 8, therefore there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. The law of spirit of life has set us free from the law of sin and death. So grab hold of that a moment. I know I'm slightly over time here. Grab hold of that. We were given the law, but we've been given something greater. It's called the truth. But truth comes with grace. And that means when we get something wrong, there's always grace. And here's the bit that Paul just brings in to complete this bit of the picture. He basically says, do we keep sinning more because we have this grace? Because grace will abound? He goes, absolutely not. A true understanding of the grace of God and the love of God that's been poured out to us doesn't mean that we sin more. Actually, it means that we're more determined to live in the way that Christ wants us to live, in righteousness, peace and truth. Well, there's a lot packed in there, so hopefully there's something there you can get hold of. It's good to be back with you. Bless you. Have a wonderful week.